Good morning and welcome to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. I'm so glad that you joined us. We're broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning. We have a lot of housekeeping to start with. As always, I'm going to put up my contact information so you can reach out to me. I would love to hear from you, and we received a lot of great texts, emails over the weekend that we're going to get to here in just a moment. But first, let me take a second to thank everyone who came up and had a great conversation with me at the Steuben County Fair on Friday. I had a blast. I did miss the pig races because of scheduling conflict, but I had my root beer, and I got to hang out with a lot of great, not just viewers, but just people in general wondering about the Republican Party and, what the future may look like. And it was a lot of fun. I had a lot of great conversations. And some of you received Frankly Speaking stickers, and others I forgot to give stickers to. But if you ever see me on the street, we just got a new batch of, let me see if I can show them here, a new batch of Frankly Speaking stickers. So if you see me out and about, I'll try to have a pocket full of them and say, hey, can I get one of those stickers? I'd love to give you a little piece of Frankly Speaking here. So again, thank you to everyone at the Steuben County Fair. That's a fun time. And the weather held out. It was really nice. It was a beautiful day for it. We have a couple announcements about the program. First, I want to get to a message that we received over the weekend, just in context of what we were talking about. So let me go to that. Let me see here. Bidenomics is the same as demonomics, meaning Democrat, that has existed since before Kennedy. Just tax and spend and make people think they're getting something for nothing. You kids out there should watch out. You think they're giving you so much, but you will pay for it. Yes, ultimately, it does come due, doesn't it? We'll also have a few other texts from over the weekend and today's program, hopefully, if you contact me. We have New York State issues. First, though, I wanted to mention this. If you missed it, the Ferrario Jazz Festival, this is a tradition for quite some time in our area. There's their logo. You've seen it before. We put together a highlight package from that festival this year, 2023. So I thought I'd put those times up for you so you can catch it if you... There we go. That's the wrong one, obviously. It's all right, we're trying here. There we go. From the Jazz Festival on Big Fox. So starting on Sunday at 1 p.m., then Thursday at 7 p.m., Friday of next week, 11 p.m. Wow, August went quick, didn't it? Sunday, 6:30, and Monday at 1:30. Do not miss it. It's a highlight from the Ferrario Elmira Jazz Festival. Okay, now we're going to be taking a short break here in just a moment. First, we've got a lot of New York State issues, but I want to get to something that just shocked me when I read it this morning. We've talked about woke culture a lot on this program and the kind of the cancelization. Oh, I should also mention, before I go into this, we're spending the whole hour together, just you and me. No guests this morning. I did that on purpose because we had so much to cover, so much to catch up on from over the weekend, and just conversations I had at the Steuben County Fair made me realize we needed just a show, just you and I. So that's why I'm asking you to reach out and contact me. But get this, because I know we have a lot of classic rock fans in the audience. Also, just music in general. I've had a lot of great conversations with you in the past about music, like when we had Tommy James on the program. You know the classic staple on radio, Queen, Fat Bottom Girls. Great song, catchy song when you look forward to when it comes on. You kind of crank it up a little bit louder. Well, not anymore. Not if you're woke. It may be one of Queen's best loved songs, but Fat Bottom Girls has been mysteriously, or maybe not so much, dropped from the group's new greatest hits collection. The 1978 track, which was written by guitarist Brian May, has been enjoyed by generations of fans as a humorous and hard-rocking tribute to a young man's appreciation of what we'll say is full-figured ladies. But 45 years later, it appears that the lyrics are just too much for many, and it has been subjected to the woke cancel culture. They are not putting it in their most recent greatest hits. It is being erased. It just, when you erase your history, I know it's just a fun song, But when does it start to get cut from radio? When will you not hear it anymore? I mean, it used to be on commercials on a lot of things. No longer will you be able to hear Fat Bottom Girl. So I'd suggest if you have an old greatest hits, or if you find an old greatest hits, you better get it if you want to be able to hear that song in the future. One person told the Daily Mail, it's woke gone mad. Why not appreciate people of all shapes and sizes, like society is saying we should, rather than get rid of it? It's outrageous. Well, there you are. Times are changing. All right. I don't know why I decided to start the program with that, but why not? Have a little fun on Monday morning and talking about the woke culture. We are going to talk about a couple of quick New York State issues. A lot here about Joe Biden. Someone speculating, Jason Chavez, saying that he thinks that Biden's not going to run. We've seen more and more pieces like this coming out, more of will it be Kamala, will it be Gavin Newsom, those type of things. So we'll talk about that when we come back. Stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox will be right back. And we are back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. And as I mentioned earlier, we will not have an M.A. Neal Financial Services section of our program this morning. I do not have an interview because I wanted to spend time with you covering all the issues of the day. We've mentioned this in the past about numerous times about the lack of belief in faith and community and patriotism. And this is a troubling trend, and some have speculated it's kind of due to COVID and how that all maybe mentally changed us during the lockdown. Some have just speculated maybe a loss of, I'm not going to say morals and make this a judgment call, but just again, not the faith in faith, the faith in community and patriotism. Binge drinking and marijuana use has reached record highs in middle-aged adults, as according to a new study, and this is from Fox 5 News out of New York. New research finds that binge drinking and marijuana use are higher than ever among middle-aged adults in the United States. The study, which comes from the University of Michigan's Monitoring the Future panel, was funded by the National Institute on Drug Abuse. Researchers found binge drinking, marijuana use, and hallucinogen consumption reached record levels among adults between the age of 35 and 50. Dr. Harris Strainer, a licensed New York State psychologist and addiction specialist, said, I'm seeing a tremendous increase in my practice, not only among men, but among women. I think a lot of it has to do with the relaxed laws about marijuana. You could maybe point to that, sure. I also think that a lot of people are microdosing hallucinogens, and older people are doing it because it goes back to their generation when they were using things like ecstasy, LSD, and other hallucinogens. He noted that heavy drinking and drug use can cause harm to physical and mental health, adding that fat-soluble substances like marijuana can affect your heart, your cardiovascular system. Sad, troubling. It seems like we have more and more of these type of studies daily, and I think it's a larger problem nationwide, and we've got to get to the core problem. And I think a lot of it goes back to, and why we talk about it so often in this program, we've got to go back to the days where we believed in community, believed in a higher being, believed in the country and America's exceptionalism. But I just wanted to mention that quickly, tying in with what we've talked about so frequently on the program. Okay, back to New York. New York GOP, okay, the New York Republicans, say that we've got a new weapon against Democrats that could be better than even cashless bail reforms. Now, many people point to the cashless bail, that point to public safety is one of the reasons why Lee Zeldin did so well. And also, of course, though he didn't win governor, many people credit him with that campaign for winning us the House as Republicans, because so many seats switched that we were not maybe perhaps expecting or hadn't looked so good in the past. But New York Republicans believe they have a powerful new weapon that might be even more successful against Democrats in upcoming elections than the state's anti-bail reform outrage in 2022, and that's the migrant crisis. GOP strategists said the potency of the migrant issue is very much akin to like what they did with the anti-bail reform, how local Republicans bludgeoned Democrats for approving the New York's widely criticized cashless bail law, bail reform is what they call it, enabling the GOP to win key House seats in last fall's election and nearly scoring the governorship and spurring a red wave in the suburbs. The people in charge who are fumbling the migrant crisis are all Democrats, of course, much like they're all Democrats that push the bail reform. President Biden, Governor Hochul, and Mayor Eric Adams out of New York City, along with New York Senators Chuck Schumer and Kirsten Gillibrand. Even some Democrats agree the crisis is a red flag for the party. David Paterson, remember him, the former governor? He said that it could lead to a nationwide revolt, not just in the state. He said just yesterday on a radio program, there does not seem to be any willingness or ability on the part of the federal government to fix what has become an ever-worsening issue. This, again, our former governor, David Paterson. The federal government just decided they are sending the people in, and we should just be happy. I don't know what they expect. They really sent no money. It could in some ways backfire when other cities have the same problem as New York City. There might be a kind of city versus country revolt, which we probably need at this point. I think most people are very sympathetic to the plight of the migrants, and you would like to help. But as in any situation, even when you're giving to charity, you give as much as you can, not as much as they think you should. Oh, that's a good line. You try to help, but it's what they force you to do. I like that line from Governor Paterson, former Governor Paterson. Former Representative Max Rose said there's a clear political trouble for Democrats in this migrant issue if the state remains in operational disarray on the migrant issue. There is significant danger that Democrats will not be able to reclaim the congressional seats that should be Democratic seats. GOP strategist Chapin Fay said the Democrats have backed themselves into a corner. The migrants are here, and they're not going back. You reap what you sow. New York City is a sanctuary city, he said. It's an issue that Republicans can use against Democrats, as the unpopular cashless bail law approved by Democrats in Albany was. It might even be more successful top to bottom. This is bad for Democrats. So what do you think? It really ties in with the overall larger picture. We can talk about the migrant issue, but you can also continue to talk about public safety, which is still a major concern. Governor Hochul recognizes it by saying that she's going to focus on it, not because she worries about your safety, but because it is a political issue and they want to win those House seats back. Again, it goes to show you where their mindset is and where their true faith is, and that is keeping their jobs. It's not about doing what's right for the people. So these GOP strategists suggesting that the migrant issue could be more impactful, more powerful than even bail reform. Now, New York is a battleground for House control, according to Politico. I know what you're saying, Frank. You're running late. I agree. They just don't know what districts are up yet. Candidates are eager to run in competitive House seats in New York. There's just one problem. They have no clear sense of where to campaign because you still have the legal fight in redistricting. I know it's shocking that we're still talking about redistricting, but Democrats were very upset that they did not get their way, so they're still fighting it. So it's not clear which seats will be competitive. And more immediately, in an era where serious congressional campaigns start well ahead of election years, the uncertainty is keeping some potential candidates from declaring their intentions. Recruitment for House races, quote, has been somewhat frozen due to redistricting, said former GOP Representative Lee Zeldin. He has a PAC that he created, if you recall, to help elect Republican candidates. Quote, it is absolutely causing a headache for people who want to step up, but they don't even know yet what district they'd be running in. There you are. A couple New York issues. We've got a lot to talk about when we come back on the national front, so stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox will be right back. And we are back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. Thank you so much for joining us. One more quick announcement before we go to the national issues of the day. Scope will be holding a meeting today. I had a great conversation with the guys from Scope. They were at the Steuben County Fair as well. We had just a really, really nice chat. It's always good to see those guys. So the meeting is today at the Bath Rod and Gun Club at 7 p.m. As you see here, there will be a PowerPoint presentation that was recorded at the New York State Conservation Council Fall Conference Zoom meeting which will feature attorney Paloma Campana. She'll be discussing the new tyrannical state legislation requiring all ammo purchases go through the New York State Police database. That's, again, $2.50 per transaction. And I had a great conversation with someone at the fair about this that came over to the booth because we talked about it on the program on Friday. And all firearms purchases go through the New York State Police database as well before the federal NICS check, which is an extra $9. This takes effect very soon, so many people have been commenting to me saying that they are going to go out and buy ammo before that extra cost adds up, and it will. So that's meeting, again, Scope. If you're not a member of Scope, I highly recommend it. I'm a proud member. And please join. It's a very important organization. Let's go to the national level. You may have seen the story this morning, maybe came out late yesterday. Hard to keep track on the weekend. But Politico reporting that Hunter Biden's lawyers vowed to put the president on the stand. So Politico received, I don't know if you could say it was leaked, but it was, maybe. But it was behind the scenes of the negotiations that fell apart in the plea deal. So President Biden now unquestionably, this is what the 32-page letter reviewed by Politico said, President Biden now unquestionably would be a fact witness for the defense in any criminal trial. So out of the New York Post, and I hate this term, but the Post editorial board saying that the media hides it, but Bidens are in big trouble as Americans get wise to the quote-unquote nothing burger. Full disclosure, I hate that term. I think a lot of people throw it around too frequently, but in this case it makes sense because what the media and those on the left continue to tell us is there's nothing to see here. It's a nothing burger. What happened with Hunter, nothing there. There's no connection to the president. And obviously you see a ton of red flags if you can find the information. As we've talked about in this program in the past, many people, when that plea deal fell apart and it was covered by major outlets, that was the first time they'd heard of it. That was the first time that those outlets had been forced, if you will, to report on it. Many going all the way back to the beginning with the laptop saying, well, it was hacked or it was Russian disinformation, so we don't ever have to talk about it again. Seems the nothing burger, as the progressive press likes to call the Hunter Biden saga, is turning into a whopper. The latest, Hunter's lawyers threatened to put President Biden on the stand if Hunter were to be charged, as I just mentioned from that piece from Politico. Hunter faced a possible gun charge for buying a weapon as a drug user. What was Joe Biden going to testify? Stand up for his son and say the prosecution violated the Second Amendment? The same president who is shutting down hundreds of gun dealers? Or wait, maybe Joe was going to testify that Hunter didn't need to pay taxes on all his earnings because much of the money was going to benefit Joe and the family. Perhaps he would have a defense for the Foreign Agents Registration Act. But we thought that Joe knew nothing about his son's business. How useful of a witness would he be if he knew nothing about anything Hunter ever did? Of course, what Joe was going to say, a very, very remote possibility despite the lawyer's grandstanding, was secondary to the main purpose of this letter that Politico was able to read: exercise blatant political interference in a criminal proceeding. And it worked. Other internal documents show Delaware U.S. Attorney David Wise was leaning towards charging Hunter with nothing at all. The blackmail by the Biden team was working. It is only because of the courage of an IRS whistleblower, Gary Shapley, that Wise was forced to change his mind. Thank you for your amazing work, Gary Shapley. Putting his career in jeopardy, the investigator laid out exactly how much of a sweetheart deal Hunter Biden was getting, how Shapley was thwarted at every turn from searching records or even interviewing Hunter himself. Excuse me. Then federal judge Norica, the next hero in our tale, says the New York Post, refused to rubber stamp a sweetheart deal that gave Hunter complete immunity from all future prosecution. A shocking clause enjoyed by no other defendant. And that's what's really, I think it's one of the reasons why we're seeing another increase in the polls for former President Trump, because you see the clear difference in how they go after Trump and how they really you couldn't even say it was a slap on the wrist for Hunter. It was nicer than a slap on the wrist. Kudos as well to Representative James Comer. He gets nothing but mockery on Twitter Yet his dogged pursuit of Hunter's business has led to revelation after revelation. Liberal commentators, of course, were more forgiving of Representative Adam Schiff, who was slightly censored, or was rightly censored after years of lies. Bit by bit, inch by inch, we learn more and see how filthy this all looks. It's telling that many of the details of the Hunter deal weren't leaked to the New York Times and Politico because the lawyer hoped to claim, laughably, that political interference prevented Hunter from walking away scot-free. It was the exact opposite. And now the same guy who bowed to pressure, David Wise, has a new title, Special Counsel. The cover-up continues, but Americans have gotten wise to the nothing burger, the quote-unquote nothing burger. Again, not my favorite term, but very appropriate, apropos in this scenario. And did you know before they were investigating Hunter Biden, the prosecutors worked with his brother, Beau? Wise worked with Joe Biden's eldest son to hash out prosecution strategies. Quote, "We will continue to aggressively pursue all types of fraud in order to protect the public," Wise said in his part of a statement with Beau Biden on a fraud case back in 2010. Today, that little-known history highlights the deep challenges Wise faces as he pursues a newly recharged investigation into Beau's brother, Hunter, in a small state long politically dominated by their father. Although Democrats always point to Wise being appointed by former President Trump as evidence of his independence, the full story of his career is more nuanced, as he spent 2 years as acting U.S. attorney under President Barack Obama and Vice President Joe Biden, and then remained as a top deputy for the remainder of their term. As many have said, Jim Jordan said this, but many have echoed it, Mr. Wise has been compromised. He cannot be trusted. So we have a couple of other things. I just wanted to highlight that, give you some updates on what we're learning, because that's a topic that we mentioned frequently last week. All right, let's take another short break. Remember, as always, you can contact me. There's our information. Weigh in on all of these topics, whether they be the New York State issues, the federal issues, or anything. You want to talk about Queen and fat bottom girls? We can. All right, stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here at WYDC TV, Big Fox. Thank you again for joining us here on Frankly Speaking on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. We're broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning. I received a very good comment about what we've been talking about this morning. Fat bottom girls, eh? What's next? And if you're just joining us, you're probably wondering what in the world that meant. Queen and their greatest hits does no longer include Fat Bottom Girls, that huge hit, fun song, because of the woke cancel culture. So what's next? The viewer asks. Stones, the Rolling Stones, Brown Sugar, David Bowie, China Girl, or Genesis, Illegal Alien? You know what? If you can dream it, the answer is yes. They're going after that because they're probably already working at it behind the scenes. I know way back when we first started talking about this cancel culture and this woke culture, I know people would say, what's next? This? Or what are they going to go after? Yes. The answer is always yes. If you can think of it, if you can dream it, they will go after it because that has become such an important culture to many. Being the most aggrieved or the most offended kind of gets you bragging rights, gets you a pat on the back. You're now the cool kid in school. So people, and a lot of people making money off of it, so they're looking for more reasons to be offended. So absolutely, those could be next. Okay, Jason Chaffetz, is he former representative? He's not a representative anymore, is he? Anyway, he says there's 5 indications that Joe Biden will not run in 2024. If you recall, in a speech recently, the president said, I hibernated in a while. All you know in Iowa for a while. Made no sense, right? It's not clear what he meant by that, but hibernating is an apt descriptor of Biden's 2024 election campaign. And I actually talked about this with former Congressman Joe Semplinsky last weekend on the program, or last week or the week before. The week before, I guess. That there is no campaign. I mean, I know he's president, so you've got that kind of bonus of always getting coverage, but there doesn't seem to be any kind of campaign fundamentals going on. So this is why Jason Chaffetz believes Joe Biden will not run. Number one, skeleton crew. Though Biden has begun hiring fundraisers for the 2024 campaign, his operation is a tiny skeleton crew of staffers working exclusively out of his home state of Delaware. That puts them closer to his home near Wilmington, but far from the center of gravity in swing states or the nation's capital. As of last quarter, he had just 4 people on the payroll, all working out of the party offices. In July, the campaign announced the hiring of a few fundraisers, but there seems to be little urgency to mount a full-scale campaign, and the first primary votes are just 5 months away. Wow, time flies, doesn't it? Strategic travel. After spending some of the summer overseas, Biden is in vacation mode for the month of August. Not only did Biden skip the traditional all-important Iowa State Fair, he traveled to Utah. And again, Jason Chaffetz said, "That's my home state," which always welcomes the President of the United States, but we're hardly a battleground state. A serious candidate would have campaigned in Nevada, Colorado, Montana. He did go to visit northern Arizona, where he proclaimed the Grand Canyon to be one of the 9 wonders of the world and full of ironic species. Those are actual quotes from the president. He's always been a gaffe machine, but with the election ramping up, his new wilderness grab does nothing to expand his base in critical Arizona. In fact, it polarizes voters. Number 3, where is Vice President Harris? Though she has visited Florida and picked fights with GOP presidential hopeful Ron DeSantis, Kamala Harris has been largely invisible through the first 3 years of the Biden presidency. Unless she's making a gaffe, one of those speeches that we sometimes read on the program, which many people call word salads, where it's almost like she starts the sentence not knowing where it's going to end. She seldom makes news. There's talks to deploying her to help with very specific demographic groups during the campaign, but as of now, we haven't seen much of her on the trail. Her portfolio is minimal. She is nowhere for solving the immigration and human trafficking crisis. She's also supposedly tackling AI. We're not sure yet if she can spell AI, says Chaffetz, or lead the critical thinking to put necessary guardrails on this emerging technology. Fiddling while Maui burns. Biden's inexcusable response to the Maui fires from his vacation on the beach of no comment ricocheted across the nation. Did he really not have anything to say to those desperate people fighting for their lives as he sunned himself on the beach? This was an opportunity for a president to flex his political muscle. Though the administration insists he has taken action, reports on the ground in Maui describe aid being blocked, properties being looted, and FEMA being AWOL. Yes, if this were like a George W. Bush, we see how they always try to cover him like during Katrina. If it were former President Trump, whatever the case, we know that the media's coverage of this would be very different because it has been disastrous. Biden, no comment is really unacceptable in that scenario. Now, we had a piece last week that suggested by the New York Post that he just didn't care. Even though he runs on the fact of this empathy, everybody thinks of empathy when they think of Joe Biden. The fact of the matter is, the Democrats have already shored up Hawaii. It's going to go Democrat no matter what. So he doesn't care. That was according to a piece by the New York Post, that politically speaking, it didn't matter to him. And finally, hibernating over Hunter. With real substantive evidence surfacing that the president's son took payments from foreign entities in exchange for access to his father, the campaign seems to be locking down. The New York Times reported that campaign manager Julie Chavez canceled a planned interview on the Biden-friendly MSNBC to avoid facing a litany of questions about Hunter Biden. Upon his return from the beach, Biden's team coordinated off reporters far enough away that Biden could not hear their shouted questions as he turned his back on them. And that is interesting, the turnaround on that, because we know the media really refused to report on Hunter for so very long. Though this could be a basement-to-beach campaign strategy, it's more likely that Biden will not run. Again, this is Jason Chaffetz. With few exceptions, we don't see him on the campaign trail defending his presidency or touting his accomplishments in key battleground states. We don't see his vice president making the case for him. He isn't sharing his vision for the future. He is hiding from the press, hiding from the scandals, and hiding from his own incompetence as commander-in-chief. By the end of this calendar year, I, for one, anticipate he won't be a candidate in 2024. And that's why I've highlighted, and I don't know if I agree with Mr. Chaffetz here, but I will say that's why I've watched with fascination the coverage of Gavin Newsom and others that maybe would take his place. We even had stories a few weeks ago that said, could Harris is polling better than Biden. Maybe she could step in. But then others saying, because she is so unpopular, maybe get her out as VP, give her Feinstein's Senate seat, and then put someone new, more likable in that VP slot. So there's been, that's politics, right? A lot of what they call it, navel gazing, a lot of thinking on issues. In the end of the day, we don't know until something actually happens. But there's another take on this in a way, and that is David Brooks, the New York Times columnist, and what he had to say about Biden, and the Democrats should feel lucky to have him as a candidate. So we'll talk about that when we come back. Stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. So as I mentioned, New York Times columnist David Brooks insisted on Friday that Democrats are extremely lucky to have President Biden as a candidate and should be more grateful. So if you're a Democrat, you are not being grateful enough for this amazing opportunity that you have. He was on PBS NewsHour. He argued that while there are problems regarding Biden's age and his approval ratings, the Democrats are overall, quote, extremely lucky to have the president as a candidate. This is why I was so shocked that the New York Times has had some recent reporting, and it's not a lot, don't get me wrong, but about Hochul and the instance of them criticizing Biden for not recognizing his 7th grandchild. Because it's shocking, because really in the newsroom at the New York Times, this would be the mindset, that you are lucky to have Biden and that you're not being grateful enough. Anytime you look at some alternative, whether it's the mystery moderate from the Midwest or Gavin Newsom or anybody else, things start unraveling really fast. And so the Democrats are lucky, frankly, to have a candidate in Biden who has presided over an incredibly strong economic recovery, who has presided over pretty good international peacemaking efforts, both in Asia this week and also in Europe, and who I believe whose numbers will go up as inflation recedes as it is. That's another thing they've been trying to tell us, that inflation is good. Remember that piece from, I think it was MSNBC, where they said, actually, it's good. Never mind you struggling to pay your bills, living paycheck to paycheck, if you're lucky. Never mind that. This is actually, never mind what you're feeling. Believe us, it's not as bad. He added, and the strong job numbers are there. And they're extremely lucky to have a candidate, frankly, who's not a member of what you would call the coastal elite. And Joe Biden sends off all the right cultural messages for moderate independent voters who don't have college degrees, and Democrats are not grateful enough for what they have, in my view. Now, keep in mind, if this gives you any idea about the New York Times, this is the Republican point of view from the New York Times. I'm not making that up. He's the more conservative columnist at the New York Times, saying that you are extremely lucky as a Democrat to have Biden and that you're not grateful enough. Now, Marcus, what's his first, or her first name, Ruth Marcus, said similar, pointing out that if Democrats ran instead of Biden or Harris, it would risk dividing the party. There are problems with Joe Biden's candidacy, she said. There are many Democrats behind the scenes and a few publicly who talk about his age, who talk about other problems with his candidacy. But let's be serious. I'm old enough to remember, I'm sorry to say, I'm old enough to remember 1980 and what happened in the Democrat Party when it was ripe with division. And if somebody were to emerge and challenge Joe Biden at this stage in the campaign, him having decided to run his vice president, who, if he somehow chose not to run, if she were not the nominee, that would create some divisions within the demographics of the party. Ooh, that's interesting. That's kind of a little threat there. Think of what that would do for the party, divide it even more. If Harris were to run, I don't think anybody in the Democrat Party really wants Harris to run, but that's kind of a fascinating, I'm not going to say a threat, but, think of what that would do to the demographics. So there you are. We're going to move away from the president, but I would love to hear your opinion on it. We do have to take a short break, so stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, stay with us. Got to see a little behind the scenes action there. I knew we were going to come back just a little bit short from that break, so that's why I just stayed staring at the screen, waiting for our time to come back on the air with Frankly Speaking on WYDC TV Big Fox, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. So Donald Trump has said he will skip at least the first debate, even hinting towards maybe participating in none of the debates. He said, "The public knows who I am." That's a good point. "The public knows who I am and what a successful presidency I had," Trump announced on Truth Social. "I will therefore not be doing the debates." Ooh, the debates, plural. It remains unclear whether the ex-president plans to skip every debate across the election cycle. See, one of the sticking points was you had to sign a loyalty pledge saying that whoever the nominee is, you would support them, and he said he was not willing to do that. Now, he's teased that he wasn't going to do the debate for a while. We had someone write in on Friday that he should turn himself in Atlanta at the same exact time as the debate is ongoing. I thought that was very clever. Trump has teased plans to skip the debates for weeks, with reports from the weekend suggesting he made the decision to actually do an interview with Tucker Carlson instead of participating in the debate in Milwaukee. And that's Wednesday, by the way. The debate's this Wednesday. The interview has already been taped, according to the New York Times, and it will air online at the same time as the debate. Now, Trump did post his biggest lead yet over DeSantis and his rivals, and other rivals, I should say, according to a CBS News YouGov poll that was published just yesterday. We'll talk a little bit about that. I realize I had to take another short break, so stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. We are back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox, and we just received a virtual wave. There we go. If you're new to the program, when people walk by, or if you want to text me a wave, we add that to our wave counter. You see it on the bottom of your screen. There's the number where you can contact me as well. It's been quiet this morning with people on the street, though. Normally we have a couple waves, but not this morning. Everybody's either head down running or not paying attention this morning. So as I mentioned, CBS News and YouGov released a poll published yesterday that Trump posts his biggest lead. So very much like we talked about last week and the week before about the indictments, as Trump said in his own speech, and we talked about this with Joe Sempolinski, but in his own speech that he's one indictment away from the White House. Every time he gets indicted, the polls continue to increase for him. His top rival, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, has fallen farther back from earlier this summer to 16%. Wow, that has not, instead of growing and doing better, his any kind of number has been slowly eroding, not even really that slowly for DeSantis. The other candidates are in the single digits, with third runner-up Ramaswamy at 7%. Now, last week, someone had texted and said maybe it could be a Trump-Ramaswamy ticket. Interesting. Ramaswamy saying all the right things. The 10 Commandments that he released last week were very interesting. If you can find that for yourself, just search online. But basically the 10 Commandments of his campaign. Likely GOP voters also overwhelmingly said at 91% that during the upcoming GOP primary debate, they wanted to hear the other candidates make the case for themselves instead of against Trump. That is going to be a tightrope for these candidates. How are they going to handle this? They cannot just focus. I know Christie will, but you cannot just focus on Trump. That does not help your case whatsoever and trying to sell who you are. Now, that's Christie's shtick. That's why last week we brought to you that top Democrat super donor has maxed out on giving to Christie, because they see a window here where he could, they think, be damaging to Trump and ultimately help Biden win. I mean, to use the term useful idiot is kind of pops into mind, but then Christie loves the attention. That's always been the case. There's another poll that was out, and what was this one from? Emerson College poll. This poll was released Saturday that shows 42% of registered voters would vote for Trump, placing him a point above Biden at 41%. And that's if there's a three-way race, meaning that if Cornel West is a candidate, which it looks like he will be in the Green Party, that would put Trump over the edge, beating Biden. A hypothetical head-to-head matchup shows Trump with a razor-thin 0.7 percentage point lead without rounding. but for rounding purposes, they are tied at 44%. This is going to be interesting. Also, in just the GOP primary poll, again from Emerson, Trump at 56%, DeSantis at 10%, tied. This is amazing. Tied with DeSantis at 10%. Ramaswamy, Pence at 3%, Christie at 3%, Scott at 2%, and Haley at 2%. That's kind of surprising because Scott was seeing an increase there for a while. Does not seem to have gained a lot of momentum, but plenty of time left, and we'll see how he does and all of the candidates do, with the exception of former President Trump, during the debate. Let's take our last short break and wrap things up here on Frankly Speaking, here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. We are back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Man, this went quick this morning, didn't it? The whole hour left together, and it seems like we're just getting started. A new trend by the media is saying that former President Trump is stressed because of all these court cases, that in this case stressed and unkept. People are speculating about his health. That's according to the media. Ramaswamy, who I'm surprised by this. Ramaswamy's been very positive on Trump, but I don't know if he sees an opportunity there. He said, it's not the same Donald Trump. This is my chance to introduce myself to the country, meaning at the debate. And so I have no issue with whatever decision he wants to make. And Trump has signaled he will not be in the first debate. If he's on there, great. If not, I'm fine with that. I fully expect to see Donald Trump on the debate stage. It is my expectation Trump will be there because as I've known him, he's not a man that I know of to be afraid. He's not somebody who's made a habit of himself to be a coward. That's true. But doesn't show up on that debate stage. That will be the best proof that the Donald Trump of today is not the same Donald Trump as in 2016. Wow. Interesting. Trump is being encouraged to drop out of the presidential race by GOP Senator Bill Cassidy from Louisiana. When asked if he thought Trump should drop out of the race, Cassidy told Casey Hunt on CNN during the State of the Union, I think so, but obviously that's up to him. I mean, you're just asking my opinion, but he will lose to Joe Biden if you look at the current polls. Now, here's a new interesting tidbit for you. Joe Manchin has kind of hinted towards running as on a unity ticket, which means he is a Democrat and then a Republican. It's with the No Labels organization. We've talked about this in the past. He keeps, stoking the fire, getting people to talk about him. He accused both parties of villainizing each other on Sunday as a moderate Democrat continues to fuel speculation about a potential third-party White House bid. That's with No Labels. If you're a Democrat, they expect you to villainize every Republican. And if you're a Republican, you should villainize the Democrats. That's not the way our founding fathers intended for this democracy to work. It was intended for us to work together. He commended the efforts of No Labels, which has been pushing a potential unity ticket as a third option in the 2024 presidential race to present Americans with additional choices. All they're asking for is, do the citizens of the U.S. want some other options, he said. All right, that is it for today's edition of Frankly Speaking. Thank you again for everybody who came out to the Steuben County Fair to say hi. I really appreciate it. We had some really great conversations. I forgot to give everybody one of these stickers. If you see me on the street, I'll have a pocket full. We got our new Frankly Speaking stickers. You can put it on your coffee mug or your car or wherever you want. So if you see me, I should have a pocket full of them. I'll give you a couple of them if you see me walking around. Well, have a great day, everyone. That's it for Frankly Speaking this morning. But please join us tomorrow morning starting at 7 right here on WYDC TV. Big Fox. Have a great day, everyone.